You're about to watch a series of interviews and moments Free Speech TV captured at the People's Summit in Chicago. We talked to journalists, authors, and leaders in the progressive community about media and their role in the Trump campaign and now the Trump presidency. As you know, now more than ever, it is critical that we have an independent media outlet like Free Speech TV that not only gives you the daily news and analysis that you can trust, but also covers these types of inspiring events. Enjoy.
Last year, I coined a term called media malpractice. That campaign was defined by media malpractice.
Trump is a product, he's not a cause. Trump is a product of this world that we're living in. And the cause is something much closer to something like Fox News, which sells this deeply reassuring, not reassuring, but it's a fun ideology. You got to remember something about Fox News. It's pleasurable to imagine that that you are both a person, you're affluent, you're privileged, and you're also the victim. You're the victim of everything, and you complain bitterly, and cry hot tears about your own victimization. People love that. There's something very comforting about that. So
Trump thanked Fox and Friends on his Twitter feed after the Comey hearing for basically being the only outlet that covered it properly.
You have treated me very fairly, and I've been a friend of your show for a long time. Remember those call-ins, right?
For years.
Maybe without those call-ins, somebody else is sitting here.
Yeah, right. So how do you break through that? Well, it's tough, of course. I mean, we're in this age of mass media. Television has more power than ever before. And these guys are very good at the game, the right wing. They're very, very good at the game. And I'm 52 years old in my lifetime. There's been, I don't know how many efforts to start a liberal radio network, and they all crash and burn. Or you look at something like MSNBC, which really, it does not achieve what a lot of people hoped it would.
Is that, you think, because it's too beholden to the Democratic Party?
That's a huge part of it. And in fact, which is a strange thing, when I was in college, we learned that the parties were no longer important, and when you studied political science, that was one of the things that they taught you. And now people love to, it's like, this is again a deeply democratic country, but there's something fun about towing the party line. There's some. It's not like the old Soviet Union or something, right? There's no big brother forcing us all to to say what the party's vision of reality, but people do it anyway.
So it's like being part of a club, it's comforting.
Yeah, something like that. And that has an upside. Of course, I'm sure that helps to get out the vote on election day, but it has this incredibly awful downside in that you can't speak to people. You can't persuade people. You can't reason with people. I think at the end of the day, people are very, very hungry for something like what Bernie Sanders was offering in the last go-round. And they are ready to hear that message. And it's just, the problem is, getting a megaphone.
Control of information and control of who gets heard is control, right? And that one of the conversations I had with Katrina earlier today, we were talking about Andrew Lack, who came out at NBC, and one of the things he's been very explicit about is the fact that he sees himself in mainstream media as a part of the establishment. They don't see necessarily themselves with a concern to rock the boat. And I want to hear from you about how you think our society would be different if we opened up who gets heard, and if media as a whole didn't see itself as a part of supporting whatever's going on.
Well, it's a very relevant question to what's happening here. I don't think that Donald Trump would be president. I mean, for as much as the corporate media now is fighting back, because Donald Trump is really attacking the media.
Right.
And I'm not talking just independent media. I mean, is
all
fiercely
media.
attacking the corporate media as well.
Right.
And I have to say, I'm really shocked by what he's doing, because I don't know if he realizes this, so I hate to say it on television, but
you're giving him advice?
I really think if he were to stop for even 3 or 4 days, the media would embrace him, or at least up until this point, because the establishment media protects the establishment.
Right.
But because he is fighting the media so fiercely and making it so personal, naming names
right.
of individuals and networks, they have a natural defense mechanism, which is good, and they start to sound like Free Speech TV or Democracy Now! They talk about independent media being essential to the functioning of a democratic society, which they should be saying all the time.
Right.
But the reason I hold the media accountable, and I'm not just saying Fox, I'm talking CNN, I'm talking MSNBC, they rolled out the red carpet for Donald Trump. Now, CBS and other networks admit this. The head of CBS said, Donald Trump may not be good for America, but he's good for CBS's bottom line.
Yeah.
Man, who would have expected the ride we're all having right now? This is pretty amazing, and, who would have thought that this circus would come to town? But, it may not be good for America, but it's damn good for CBS. That's all I got to say. So, what can I say? It's, the money's rolling in, and this is...
Polls are open.
This is fun. We had a debate a couple of weeks ago with 14 million people on a Saturday night. It's amazing. That's all I can say.
Do you look at the Trump phenomenon as impacting ad spend? Because while he's got lots of money, he's got a lot of free media as well.
Yeah, he's getting a lot of free media, but all that's happening out there's a lot of money in the marketplace. There's a lot of money in the marketplace, and sure, is Donald, they're not even talking about issues. They're throwing bombs at each other, and I think the advertising reflects that. Most of the ads are not about issues. They're sort of like the debates. They're saying he did this or he did that. It doesn't say what I stand for. It's, it is, I've never seen anything like this, and, this is going to be a very good year for us. Sorry. It's a terrible thing to say, but bring it on, Donald. Go ahead. Keep going. Don't write. Somebody, said that at another investor conference, and the next day some blog put out, Moonves supporting Trump wholeheartedly. I said, no. I'm not taking it at sides. I'm just saying, for us, economically, Donald's place in this election is a good thing.
They presented him to the country uninterrupted.
Yeah.
His full speeches. If they did that for everyone, then you could say that's even-handed. They let all those candidates speak. But you do a comparison of what they did with Bernie Sanders versus Donald Trump. I mean, the Tyndall report is a fascinating report that looks at coverage. I mean, they showed the empty podium as they waited for Donald Trump for more minutes in a year than they ever showed of a Bernie Sanders speech. I remember, I think it was Super Tuesday 3, March 15th. I think 5 states were in primaries. They showed the full speeches of the candidates who won and lost, as they should have, every single one. And I think at the time it was Rubio, it was Cruz, it was Kasich, it was Clinton, it was Trump. They did not even speculate where Bernie Sanders was. And he was in neck-and-neck races in the Democratic primary with Hillary Clinton in 2 states, including Illinois, her own state.
Right,
and he was neck-and-neck with her. In fact, that night, Bernie Sanders was speaking to the largest crowd of any of them. It was in Phoenix, Arizona, thousands and thousands and thousands of people. They didn't even play a sound bite. We weren't planning to do this the next day, but because no one even speculated where he was, we played some of his speech. Who would have thought it's a revolutionary act to play an excerpt of a primary night speech of a major party candidate?
Right.
But that's what it became. You know, Noam Chomsky talks about the manufacturing of consent.
Right.
For war, for candidates, and that's exactly
the use of the
what
media
the
to do
media
that.
did.
Yeah.
And again, make no mistake about it, it wasn't just Fox. It was MSNBC, it was CNN, the very networks that are fighting back against him now.
Look at Bernie Sanders' campaign. The gatekeepers of our establishment media gave him almost nothing. They gave Trump unfettered access to the airwaves.
They just turned the camera on.
Media malpractice.
Yeah.
So what's encouraging is that he broke through that.
Yeah.
In the same way Jeremy Corbyn, who, it's a win of sorts.
Yes.
He broke through the media barricade.
Yeah.
The tabloids, even The Guardian, savaged him.
One of the things that you've warned about at The Nation is not being hysterical about Russia, not overreacting, and not relying so much on that issue to believe that it's going to save the Democratic Party. But at the same time, there's a balance to try to hold the administration to account on any wrongdoing that might have happened.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious as to what's the right balance, and what are your overall thoughts?
It's a terrific question. I begin with the fact that I think we need an independent investigation. We're witnessing possible obstruction of justice. I think there's been a little bit too much of a leap to claim it. My concern about the Russia issue is that it seems to me that there's so much focus on it that we're losing sight of some of the other issues, which doesn't mean we shouldn't have investigation, but think about, Nina Turner was very good on this, the former Secretary of State of Ohio. You go out to Flint, Michigan, right? Mm-hmm. And they're not talking Comey, they're not talking Jared Kushner, which doesn't mean you don't have some investigation going.
Right.
But they're not. What are we saying to them about water supply?
Right.
And the damage to their communities. I also worry, as someone who has studied, Russia for years. I've been going for 35 years. I'm friends with the leading independent news people and worked on feminist issues. It's neither pro-Trump nor pro-Putin to argue that we need a working relationship with Russia. I mean, we're on the cusp of an escalating arms race, which could lead to a catastrophe. We need a political resolution to the crisis in Syria. So I think that there is a ginned up frenzy about Russia, and it doesn't give agency to those who voted for Trump. It's saying that the Russians controlled it.
Right.
I mean, I just think we've lost the balance. I come back to the balance. We've lost the balance in this discussion.
Yeah.
Investigate possible collusion, possible interference in the election, but don't let it dominate. And MSNBC, a station, you've been on it, I've been on it. We did Melissa Perry's show years ago. Chris Hayes was the Washington editor of The Nation.
Yeah. He's
not able to do some of the programs he might do, which would have real political impact. I'll just say one, he did a great town hall a few months ago in West Virginia. Mm-hmm. It was the night of the Republican health care plan. Think about it, people in that community, many who had voted for Trump, were like, what's he doing? And there was a miner who said to Bernie Sanders, who was with Chris, you've done more to protect my pensions and my family than Senator McConnell. What's going on in Washington? I just think the more we can listen to people in the country, and the Russia stuff needs to happen, but it's occupying too much space.
Trump is an idiot, I believe. You said, or stupid, but he's really good at it, meaning that it's actually an effective shtick that's a political weapon. And so I'm wondering if you can just talk about why that shouldn't be underestimated and the force behind that.
Well, yeah, I'm worried because, sort of the coverage of Trump is this kind of nonstop, gaffe, caught you doing something totally inappropriate, mocking how long he shakes the leader's hand, just the sort of the nonstop Trump show, the gifts of Melania slapping his hand away. I mean, all of that. It's created this narrative that he is completely out of control of what his administration is doing, that there can't be any thought behind it, right? That there's no, he's just this complete bumbling buffoon. Mm-hmm. And what worries me is that, I'm not saying this is all some vast conspiracy and he's planning all of it, right? Like, I think there's some of it that he has always understood as a showman, that it's useful to have everybody focused on your dramas. Like, he has known that since he created his own celebrity around his extramarital affairs. Like, he understands that, that
his faults are a part of his appeal.
Yes, and that anything that gets the media focused on the drama around his personal life, it distracts from, the unsoundness of his business and now the unsoundness of his presidency.
Right.
So he understands that. And then there's all kinds of drama that is being inflicted upon him. I don't think he likes what's going on with Comey. Obviously, that is not his plan, right? But the fact is, while we're all, focused on the Trump show, for lack of, of a better term, look at this methodical transfer of wealth that is happening, that it's not at all chaotic. I mean, if you look at his tax policy, his healthcare policy, if you look at how he is implementing his infrastructure spending, which is all about privatization, if you look at the betrayal of the promises around Social Security and protecting healthcare, all of it is this methodical, organized transfer of wealth from low-income people, middle-income people, to the 1% of the 1%.
That's right.
And that's not chaotic, right? I mean, with the gifts he's handing out to Wall Street. So what worries me is this idea that there is no coherence, it's all bumbling. And meanwhile, it's like, well, this looks really coherent.
You are also a radio host, your show, The 0 Hour. How do you think we need to start framing issues and really effectively using language to call out what Trump is doing and what the Republicans are doing? Because it's so easy for that sector of American society to just say, fake news, fake news, fake news.
Since you're attacking us, can you give us a question? Mr. President-elect. Mr. President-elect, since you are attacking our news organization, can you give us a chance?
Your organization
You are attacking our news organization. Can you give us a chance to ask a question, sir?
Go ahead.
Sir, can you state, Mr. President-elect,
go ahead.
can you state categorically,
she's asking a question. Don't
Mr.
be
President-elect, can you give us a question?
Don't be rude.
You're attacking us. Can you give us a question?
Don't be rude. No, I'm not going to give you a question. I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you state categorically?
You are fake news.
Sir.
Go ahead.
And move along and keep their blinders up. You have people like George Lakoff who say the Democrats don't use language effectively enough to frame issues. As a host, how do you use language to cast issues, news reports, in a way that you hope might break through that serious barrier we have today, the polarization we're feeling?
I actually ran into George Lakoff right after the convention last year. You were there. And I told him how frustrated I was at all these signs that said, love Trump's hate. First of all, because the subliminal mind sees love Trump, love Trump. People watching TV are being programmed. But also, don't make it about Trump. Don't be something.
Hillary Clinton did, sadly.
Right. My mantra for this is always don't just tell us what you hate, tell us what you love. Don't just tell us who you aren't, tell us who you are. So that's my answer to your question, is stand for something, fight for something, have a cause, have a clear, articulate, focused message.
I really do think that people have much more in common than we think. The corporate media thrives on the absolute,
conflict.
loggerheads conflict.
Yeah.
But I think if we really got to, even with Donald Trump, you know how he attacked the Chinese president and then all of a sudden he's saying, oh, he's a nice guy. That's the role that the media plays. We don't meet everyone in the world, but when you watch television or watch online or listen to the radio, it's the way you learn about people that you'd never otherwise meet.
That's right.
And when you hear someone describing their own experience, no matter how different they are than you, whether it is a Palestinian child or an Israeli grandmother, an aunt who is an elder of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe or an uncle in Afghanistan, you begin to understand where they're coming from. And I didn't say agree with it. How often do we agree with our family members? But you begin to understand why they feel the way they do. That understanding is the beginning of peace.
That's right.
I think the media can be the greatest force for peace on earth. Instead, all too often, it's wielded as a weapon of war.
One of the things that's really important about the People's Summit is the gathering of young activists, young people who are passionate about independent media, about transforming society from the ground up. And what insights you have about the importance of not relying on mainstream media, the importance of young journalists to seek an independent route, because as we were saying, some of the transformations that have happened at a place like MSNBC, for example, is because, mainstream media sees itself as a part of the establishment.
That's right. I think that's right. The guy who came in to run MSNBC, Andrew Lack, I think said very clearly that we see ourselves as part of the establishment. How then do you hold the powerful accountable, the establishment accountable, which I see as the role of a media, to hold government, corporate power. I think young people are finding their news in other ways. You know, I mean, you look at the demographics for some of the corporate network news. Fox. 60, 70 years old. All power to older people, but younger people are being creative, innovative, in creating their own media diet. And you see it in the insurgencies cropping up around the country, that they're not being tethered to the status quo.
Right.
And I think just as the status quo is imploding in so many areas, finance, government, it's imploding in the media too. There's a splintering, which is both healthy and, you know, it's worrisome sometimes. But I think it's, as I said earlier, it's like the old order. The old media order is disappearing and the new one is not yet there. And in this moment, people are finding their own way, which is healthy. Look at Bernie Sanders' campaign. The gatekeepers of our establishment media gave him almost nothing. They gave Trump unfettered access to the airwaves.
They just turned the camera on.
Media malpractice. So what's encouraging is that he broke through that. In the same way Jeremy Corbyn, who, you know, it's a win of sorts. He broke through the media barricade. The tabloids, even The Guardian savaged him. So I think we need to think hard about what is a media that is critical-minded but sustains, inspires, oxygenates movements, and covers them seriously.
When the media spotlight shines in the right direction, what a difference it can make. And we have to redirect that media spotlight, build our own media, and challenge the corporate media. They have a responsibility as well. If they don't live up to their obligation, they're using the public airwaves, they should have their licenses revoked. If you don't have that time, it further marginalizes anyone who speaks outside of the Washington consensus.
Right.
And that's what we believe at Democracy Now! And I think overall, we all believe at Free Speech TV. Let people explain why they come to different conclusions, how you go from A to B to Z and end up in a very different place. And that takes time.
I can't stress enough how important it is to not only be a part of the movements you're a part of, but demand that the media reflect those movements, because it is the way we learn about the world if we don't know someone personally from another country or come from that place ourselves. And it is the way the rest of the world learns about us. And it must be through something other than a corporate lens. Make sure, as you organize, that you are also shaping your own narrative, and you are challenging all of the media, the corporate and independent media, and maybe you are a part of it, to reflect the great diversity of voices. I see the media as a huge kitchen table that stretches across the globe, that we all sit around and debate and discuss the most important issues of the day: war and peace, life and death. And anything less than that is a disservice to the servicemen and women of this country. They can't have these debates on military bases. They rely on us and civilian society to have the discussions that lead to the decisions about whether they live or die, whether they're sent to kill or be killed. Anything less than that is a disservice to a democratic society.